be a little bit of a soft start. But thank you everybody for coming. My name is Chuck Worcester. I'm the town moderator for Hartford. And this is not an official meeting that I'm moderating. So I'm doing this because I think it's a wonderful thing for us to have candidate forums like this. So, but this is not an official duty that I'm doing here today. Huge thank you to the Bugbee Center, to Susan and Mark, all the staff. Really wonderful to have a chance to do this, and to do it here is great. Also, thanks to the folks at Junction Arts who are recording this, and this will be available for people to watch online, which is great. So I know Mark and others will have details on how to access this for folks who want to. So there'll be more chances to see this after today, so hopefully more people will get a chance to see it. The third thank you is for our candidates for stepping forward and for coming today. Fantastic to have people. And then lastly, all of you who are here, which is a wonderful turnout here for the middle of a sunny day in a not very sunny winter. So this is a precious afternoon. I appreciate everybody being here. So our goal today is to get a chance to hear from candidates and ask questions of candidates. So that's going to be our goal. I see a lot of these sheets in the audience, so you all probably have the same idea as I do about what the ground rules are. We're going to start off, we're going to give each candidate 4 minutes to say what they want to say. And then I'll give them a chance to introduce them to us. After that, we'll have a chance to ask them questions. Now, because we're recording this for online, this is the only microphone. So the way we're working this is we're having you write your questions on these green cards. And I'm just making a pile here in the order in which I receive them, and I'll just start asking them when the time comes. If you do have a question, send your card forward, or maybe Susan or someone will circulate now and again, and we'll get the cards up here. We have until 3 o'clock nominally to keep going here, so we'll see how many questions we have, how far people want to go. We'll stop earlier if we want. If we haven't finished by 3, the candidates ideally will still be here for sort of a Q&A afterwards. That'll just be a little more informal mingling after this part is over. So I think that's the overview of what we're about to do. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. Great, so we're going to start off. I've got the candidates' names here. Not everybody's here. I think at least one more is on the way, but it may be that we don't hear from everybody. But I have my magic basket, and so we're going to draw here. This is very scientific, to see which candidate we will hear from first. I should clarify that these are all candidates for the select board, so for the town part of town government. And there are 3 seats that are going to be voting on, that we're going to vote on in March. One of those is a 3-year seat, and there's 2 people running. So on your sheet, that's the right-hand column. That's Patrick and Ida. There are also 2 seats that are for 2 years each. Hey, Sue. 2 seats that are 2 years each. That's your left-hand column. That includes Susan, Rocket, Brandon, and Aaron. So you're going to have to keep a little bit in your mind as you hear from candidates that they're not all running for the same seat. So just kind of, you can refer to your sheet here to keep track. Yes, question, Linda.
The questions must come from town of Hartford residents, is that correct?
You know, if it does say that, if you put on your card which town you're from, I'll note that. So in town meeting officially, only residents of the town are allowed to speak unless the town invites others to speak. So this is kind of an informal arrangement. When I read the question, I will note where someone is from, and then everybody can kind of keep track of that. Okay, so our first candidate, we'll have 4 minutes, is going to be Brandon Smith. Great. Come on up.
All right.
You've got a little height on me here. Hello, everyone. I'm wearing this mask. You'll have to excuse me because I'm on the tail end of a cold. Tested negative for COVID this morning, though, so that's good. Well, so my name's Brandon, and I've lived here just a couple years so far. And I I build houses for a living. I work as a project manager at a house building company in Lebanon. I've been building houses for about 4 years, roughly the start of the pandemic. And before that, I did all kinds of things, mostly journalism. Worked for a think tank briefly in D.C. That was concerning itself with enforcing monopoly law, of all things, trying to make sure the government enforced what was already on the books in terms of a monopoly law. So my first kind of career as an adult was as a newspaper reporter in my hometown. A town about this size, 10,500 people. And I spent some years there being a reporter there, mostly covering local government. So I learned kind of how that worked there. And then I moved to a slightly bigger town, Springfield, Ohio, and covered local government there. I'd just like to say that I'm really interested in policy that is kind of proven, like borne out by evidence. You'll see another name on there, Ida. She's a research scientist, and I think she and I are in the same camp where there are solutions out there to certain problems that have already been tried and true, you know, and it's really our job to kind of like look and see what they did and just do that. I was talking to someone here last week. We got to talking about drug issues in this community. That's also a big thing in the town I grew up in. And that and homelessness, big problems, but they really have been solved elsewhere. Like in Portugal, which has a very similar percentage of people overdosing as we have here, they implemented a host of policies and things, and they reduced their overdoses and probably usage by 97%. I don't know about you, but when I hear statistics like that, I just kind of think, I don't care what I think the solution should be. I just need to throw that out the window and look at what works over there and just do it. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. At any rate, I'm really looking forward to meeting each of you. I will be here every Friday for lunch until and through the election, just to talk to anyone who'd like to talk to me. Again, my name's Brandon. Thank you so much.
All right, Brandon, you are under the 4-minute limit, which warms the heart of the moderator. I'm not trying to put my thumb on the scales here. Okay, so our next candidate to speak for 4 minutes is Sue Buchholz.
Okay, I'm not that tall either. Hi, I'm Sue Buchholz, and I am almost shocked that I want to be on the select board. And most people who know me would probably agree with that. I think I dove in last time too deep by going up to Montpelier, and I'll tell you that I cried every day for the first 2 weeks because I couldn't believe what I got myself into. But I think that the job in Hartford, I think, is more manageable, and I mostly decided to run because I think we keep getting outside of our lane here on the select board, that there are issues in the town we need to address, and stop trying to fix everything in the world. Now, I'm a big fixer. My husband says he wants to see the list of nonprofits on whose board I have not served in the 25 years we've been married. Because I do think we all should be out there doing what we can for our community. I mean, my parents were almost never both home when I was growing up because one of them was at a parish council meeting or the alderman's board or the ladies guild or, making sure our lives were okay. And I think it's important for us all to be doing something along those lines, but we have to be careful to make sure we're taking care of our town. And that's what I would like to see. I would also like to see a little bit more, and this will be weird coming from a lawyer because, you know, I argue for a living. I'd like to see more respect for each other on our select boards, in the street. We don't have to take everything someone else says personally. It takes away from our ability to do the work for the town. Now, the last thing I want to say, which also comes out of my childhood, in New Haven, Connecticut, my parents were pretty sure canceled each other's vote in every election of my entire life. And they would argue about it. And so we were used to that. You know, we're used to respectful discourse. They met when they were 14 and they were together till they were 80. So, you know, it didn't ruin their relationship. I think it made it better. And we would go to sleep many nights listening to them argue downstairs about what you needed to be doing in the next election and what you shouldn't be doing. But it also made it okay for us to have those discussions. So I may have a D next to my name, but I adored my Republican father, and we had many conversations that I think informed my views and made it better. So I want us all to talk, but I can't watch some of the select board meetings for how disrespectful people are to each other. There is no excuse for that, and it needs to stop. And I hope we can stop it and just do the work of the town. Now, the last thing I'll say is Jim is so relieved that I'm not moving anywhere if I get this job. So, and I thank any of you who helped to make him who he is, because my life has been phenomenal since I met him. So, thank you.
Thanks, Sue. And I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that Sue was one of my predecessors as town moderator. And she came in under the wire also. Okay, our next candidate to speak for 4 minutes is Ida Griesemer. Is someone going to speak for Ida? Anybody here? We thought maybe someone was going to. Okay, if somebody comes in later, we will endeavor to work them in. Okay. Next from the Magic Basket to speak for 4 minutes, Patrick Danaher.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here. My name is Patrick Danaher. I live on Dothan Hill in Hartford Village. I'm a retired sea captain. I'm a candidate for the 3-year term on the Hartford Select Board, and it's a pleasure and an honor to stand before you today. I'd like to thank the Bugbee Center for organizing this event. The Bugbee is a special place for me. They helped with the care of my mother, Evelyn, for many years. They did an outstanding job. She passed away peacefully last year at her home at the age of 98. Thank you. I'm sure she is looking down at us today from heaven. Also, I'd like to thank my fellow senior citizens and the public for taking the time to come out today. It's good to see such robust civil engagement. My family has lived on Dothan Hill for nearly 100 years. I was born, raised, and schooled here in the town of Hartford. I am a product of this community. I am running for a seat on this board because I believe it is out of step and out of balance with the needs of this community. The current board is steering this town in the wrong direction. We are off course. I want to help direct the board back to carrying out the duties stated in the town charter. I want to help the board return back to the administrative duties it is charged with, rather than chasing social and cultural issues. I want to steer the board back toward fixing the town's crumbling infrastructure. I want to help the board to being honest, trustworthy, and transparent with the town's people. I want to balance the board so we are presented with a budget that is clear and easy to understand. I want to steer the board back to carrying out the will of the people they represent. A board that does not smuggle in their policies. Policies should be presented honestly and transparently. In order for this town to prosper, we need to attract the best and the brightest. Unfortunately, we are not drawing the talent we need for the future. Our policies and politics are driving them away. We must choose by merit, not identity. In the end, we must decide whether this select board is working for themselves or for us. For far too long, this board has been unchecked, unaccountable, and invisible. We are tired of excuses. We want answers and action. I certainly don't know everything about this town. I don't have all the answers, but I do have history, I have ideas, and I have ambition. I think it's worth my time to step up and help out. It should be worth yours as well, and together we can make a difference. There's a lot of change taking place today in the world, our nation, and this town. It is important to understand, participate, and direct the course of this change. It is important to have a voice in this change. It is important to have choices in this change. I want to be your choice. I want to be your voice. I want to be your choice for change. When I was young, I remember John F. Kennedy invoking the words, "It's not what your country can do for you, it's what you can do for your country." These words resonate today like never before. It's time for me to give back to the community. It's time for you and me and all the citizens of this town to act, to stand up, and make this change. My name is Patrick Danaher, and I'm running for the 3-year term on the Hartford Select Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Continuing our streak here of being in under the wire. I'll have a chance to collect more green cards in a second too, so not to worry. Okay, great. Come on in. We might need to add a few more seats to our senior center. This is a good problem to have.
Absolutely.
Okay, our next speaker, who's running for select board to speak for 4 minutes, is Rocket.
Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Good to go.
Good to go.
My name is Rocket. I assume many of you know me for already serving on the select board, but for those of you who don't know a little bit about my background, I was born in California. I came to Vermont in 2007 for the Putney School. I stayed in Vermont for Middlebury College, where I studied economics, and I currently am finishing up my law career, my 3-year program at Vermont Law, and it's that last school that brought me to this part of the state. So I've been in Vermont more or less since 2007, but I would say relatively new to Hartford by many residents' standards. I've had the honor of serving on the select board for the last 2 years, and I want to be really careful in that anything I say about the select board is my voice and my opinion, and not, of course, speaking on behalf of the select board. What I will say is this: it's a big learning curve to serve on the select board. And when I first got on the board, I was more ignorant than perhaps I should have been. And I also ran an election where I ran unopposed, which I think is very bad. I think the fact that there is competition is a wonderful thing. It's a choice for the voters. When I got on the select board, town management was in total disarray. We had a town manager who ended up being transitioned out. And then in the last 2 years, we have a new head of DPW, a new police chief, and also a new assessor. So 4 major positions have all changed in the last year and a half, 2 years. It's a lot of transition. Now, I do understand that the select board is rightfully criticized for being off track and for being contentious and combative and disrespectful, not just to each other, but also to citizens. I think that's true, and I will also take responsibility for having been part of that. What I would ask all of you to understand is that we are people in process, and that some of the frictional, difficult conversations we've had were the result of having to make tough decisions. So you have people that are learning in live motion, under the scrutiny of the public eye, also trying to navigate pretty difficult decisions. Now, I will openly and honestly say that I have not done that perfectly, and I take ownership of that. But I would also defend my fellow select board members in saying that there is not really the conspiracy that we might suspect. One of the main problems that happens on the select board is that our meetings are way too long, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours sometimes. What that does, everything we discuss and deliberate is public, and you can find that in public record, but it is very difficult for citizens to stay tuned, and I totally understand that. That needs to change. I think we need to also improve our capital planning, because right now what we're doing is we're taxing and earmarking funds for future years' purchases. So the town is acting as a bank, and that needs to be restructured. There are other things that I would love to see implemented, but those are two core ones. Obviously, we need to work on housing in the area, but I do think that I would push against what Brandon said and say that every community is different, and I think that Hartford is notably different than even our neighboring towns. And so I think our solutions do need to be fit for our community. So those are some of the priorities that I think we are well positioned to continue pivoting towards. I certainly take ownership of where I've fallen short, and I have always been receptive to critique, and I've always showed up where invited to a street in the neighborhood, a business in the community, a nonprofit, and I maintain that openness. For me, serving on the select board is an act of public service, so I offer myself humbly to continue to serve the public, but I also accept if there's a referendum frustration at the select board and that I am voted out, and I think that would be worthwhile as well. Whatever you want, you should get. Thank you.
Good, so I can stop this thing. There we go. Great, thanks, Rocket. So I'm peering into the magic basket here. I'm hoping that I find Aaron's name, and I do.
No mathematician.
Come on up, sir.
Thank you.
We'll give her a chance to come through. Yeah. I got a timer here too.
Make sure I don't hit a lamp here. For you.
Coast is clear.
Okay, thank you.
We're good to go? Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Aaron Warner, and this is my first job interview in a long time because I'm a small business owner, so if I'm overdressed, that's why. So anyhow, I'll just tell you a little bit about my background. So I'm originally from Southeast Portland, Oregon. I lived there until about 2007. I married a woman from Lyme, New Hampshire, and when her father passed away, some of you might remember Jim Nichols, Nichols Hardware. Anybody? So I married his daughter. We had a little boy together, moved out here, but we had a very star-crossed marriage. So she and I ended up only lasting about 3 years. And then I moved to Norwich briefly before moving to Hartford in 2010. I would like to say that I agree with a lot of the points that the other candidates made up here, like Sue. I don't really want the job. I kind of feel obligated to run at this point because I have a lot of experience, which you'll hear about here in a second. Like Rocket, I think solutions are unique to a community. Just because something worked in Portugal doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work here, although we should still look at it. I think it's a good idea. And I agree with that, Brandon. I think you want to go after things that are proven to work in towns. What makes for a healthy town? And I say healthy because I'm a health and fitness professional. That's one of my businesses. And so I look at things in terms of health. I agreed with some of the things that Patrick said, but I won't belabor the point. So anyhow, I rented for 10 years, so I've been a renter. I threw away about $180,000 in rent before I said, hey, you know what, I think I want to buy something. So ended up buying the house across the street up there on Campbell Street. Anybody remember Barry Betters? Yeah, okay, I bought his old house, and then I took his paving garage, turned it into my fitness training studio, and then I also started an auto detailing business with my nephew back in 2018 at Sheer Excellence Auto Detailing. So I spend most of my days, I'm up at 4:30 in the morning training clients from 5 to 7-ish, and then Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, instead of cleaning up people's bodies, I'm cleaning up your guys' cars. And so I'm kind of a clean up, fix it up kind of guy, which is part of the reason why I think I have some of the skills necessary for dealing with some of the issues in this town. Just a little bit of my background. I went to Western Oregon University, I did sheet metal for a little while. I was a one-man picket line for a time at a sheet metal company. I was a program specialist for 3 years in a house of highly functioning pedophiles, and I know that's an uncomfortable thing for people to hear, but it's something that once you do it, you can't not see the dangers that are in our community, so that's something I feel very passionately about speaking about. I was the head of the golf fitness program in Eugene, Oregon. That's how I got into fitness training, because I was trying to play golf professionally. My story is a little like Forrest Gump. I've just done a lot of things. When I came out here, I started working at Anytime Fitness. My business was Good News Training. While there, I helped people win Olympic Pan American Championships. Brett Heil, I helped him win a Pan American Championship, the kayaker from Norwich. For 5 years, I went down to Henniker and worked with the New England College rugby team. We went to 6 national championships and we won 2. So I know what it means to work with a diverse group of people and work towards success and achieve things that are long shots, especially with a limited budget like we had in Henniker, if you've ever been down there. It's a very limited budget for the rugby program. I obtained a chaplaincy at the Riverbank Church where I used to attend. I was in Business Networking International for about 5 years, the Twin State chapter with Cassia Butterfield and Kim LaBarge. If anybody knows those two, you can ask them about me. They nominated me president at one point, so I think they felt highly enough about me to be in leadership. I decided to get political about 6 years ago when the world started to seem a little bit crazy, and I started writing for the Vermont Daily Chronicle. Hey, that's my 4 minutes. Hopefully I can cover the rest of it over the time with your questions. Thank you.
Okay, any other green cards back there? You're welcome to continue to fill them out and pass them up, so I just don't want anybody to get missed. Okay, good. So here's what we're going to do. We only have the one microphone, so I'm going to kind of be the microphone manager and move it around the tables here. What we're going to try to do is I'm going to read a question, and we're going to give a chance for each candidate to respond in about a minute, which is pretty quick, candidates. But I think it's important. I'm over a dozen questions here, and with 5 of us, here, Harry, and with 5 candidates, so we're already well over an hour here, even if people stick to the minute. So it's going to be important that we try to kind of keep moving. I'm sure some of these questions will cover similar themes, which is great. And again, if we get to the end and there's more time, we can continue, we can even double back for things. So, but my goal for this first round here is to make sure every question gets asked and everybody has a chance. Okay, so candidates, this microphone has this little thing on top, which is important for the AV, so make sure that stays on top. Okay, so I'm just going to start here, and then next time I'll start with Rocket, and I'll move my way down. Okay, this is a question from Carol Lane here in White River Junction.
That's me.
The question is, how do you plan to stay within your budget without raising taxes?
The same way I do it at home and at my business. You have to look at what you have and you have to plan accordingly. It's really not as hard as we're all making it these days, but that will be my goal. We look for what we can cut, what somebody else can cover, and just stay in the lane.
Hi, Carol. I think there's 2 sides of this problem. One is the tax side, the revenue side, and you can fix that with growing the grand list. And the other side is the spending side, and you can do that by cutting the budget. On the side of growing the grand list, that's, I think, ideal for everyone. That's growth in the town. And we're talking about real dollars taxed. I think looking at the tax rate is kind of irrelevant. It's a nice gauge, but the real thing that people care about is how much they pay in their check. The problem on the cost side is rising costs across the board, including salaries, which is a huge driver. And the best way we can mitigate that is finding ways to deliver a better service with the same staff that we have. It's, I think, year over year, aspirationally, that should be how, instead of trying to grow the government, just to deliver better service.
I think how I would tackle both of those sides of the coin is I would try to attract more business that will earn more money. And have more folks making more money locally so that they can pay into that pot of taxes, as opposed to raise the rate. As for the budgeting, saving money on the town side, I think it's more a question of, would I be willing to look at every expenditure line? Would I be willing to spend hours and tens of hours reading the most boring stuff imaginable? And I will tell you the answer is yes. I spent 15 years doing journalism about all kinds of stuff, but the work of journalism is very boring. And I would continue with the boring work in earnest.
I agree with Brandon. I think growing the town in terms of attracting businesses, or at least growing the revenue by attracting businesses, is a good way to go. But I think public safety undergirds that. So I'm concerned about the safety of the town, because you want to attract businesses here, and businesses are going to be attracted to a safe town with good schools. They're going to, people who want to build a family are going to be the higher, income individuals who you're going to be able to tax you. And budgeting is hard. I mean, let's be honest, budgeting is hard. My wife and I have had historic bouts over our budget, and we've blown it I don't know how many times. But when you come to government, it's a different story. So like Brandon, I do some journalism, and I've looked at the administrative state that we have in Vermont, and there's just tons of people making tons of money. And I have to ask, do we really need all of that? I mean, is there redundancy that we can cut out? And that's a hard one to face, but sometimes it's a necessary question that needs to be asked.
Well, I agree with Sue. Just do it like you do in your own home. You need to balance the budget. You can't spend more than you take in. I think we need to grow the business environment in the town, and I'm not sure a new tax for the businesses, the 1% tax is the way to go on that. And I'm not sure taxing the homeowners is the way to go either. I came back here hoping to retire here, and I'm not sure I can. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to hold on to our homestead the way it looks like the projected taxes are going to go up in this town. So you need to make hard decisions, hard choices. You can't spend more than you have. So we can't have new positions if we don't have the money for them. And, again, I'm old school, balance the budget.
Great, thanks. That was working well. Okay. So the next question I have, and I'll start with Rocket on this one, and then we'll continue around, is from Linda Miller here in Hartford. Question is, do you believe that Joe Biden is the duly elected president?
I think that's a very stupid and irrelevant question to this conversation. I will say that in collecting my petition, my signature petitions to get on the ballot here, I was asked a similar question. And when you talk about the select board being out of focus, I think that's in that theme.
I think by the common definition of duly, as in who won the election, the answer is just yes.
I agree. I don't know what this question has to do with becoming a select board member. I think it's ultimately irrelevant. So, yeah. I like Rocket. I just don't think it's worth the time answering, quite honestly.
Yes.
Okay, flying along here.
Don't forget. Because I got a couple things to say about this. This is a huge issue in our culture, that we have government processes that are taken through their steps, and then we have a huge part of our country who doesn't, they think they've been lied to. So I think it's really important to say yes. Would he have been my first choice of everybody I know to be president? No. Is he my president? Yes.
Okay, great. Next question that I have And I'll start, Brandon, with you. From Robert Riccio, did I pronounce that correctly? Great, here in White River. Question is, what are your top 3 priorities for the town of Hartford?
I'm so thankful for the opportunity to talk about that. The way I kind of approach it is that I look out and see all of us, we're members of families. And if not blood families, then chosen families. And families right now are having a really hard time making ends meet. So a big part of that is housing. I think housing being too expensive has done a lot to this community that's just not great. So that's a big priority for me. The other is on the other side. I think people who work here probably should be paid a little more than. I think work is really about earning your place in the world. And it probably deserves a little more.
Can you restate the question?
Yes, question is, what are your top 3 priorities for the town of Hartford?
Well, I'm not really thinking in terms of priorities for the town of Hartford so much as priorities if I become a select board member. And by that I mean, like Rocket was talking about earlier, there's a huge learning curve I anticipate. So I think my priority would be to learn as much as I could and not come in thinking that I have the answers. I think there's some obvious issues that have been stated in terms of infrastructure and homelessness and drugs, and these are all things I have experience with. I've been homeless, I've been a drug addict, I've been a drug dealer, I've overcome all those things. So, I understand them, but I think understanding them from a civic, municipal level is important, and just listening to what people have to say, but then also not being afraid to, live up to the responsibility of the job and make the tough decisions and be unpopular. I'm pretty good at being unpopular.
What was the question again?
We're doing the top 2 priorities.
I'm for growing a good business environment so we can offset some of these property taxes in town. The next thing I think is really important is providing a safe environment. I had my neighbor, Winnie Perkins, come down the other day and was talking, and she was telling me how unsafe she felt nowadays in Vermont. And that's just wrong. We need to enforce the laws we have on the books, and we need to incarcerate people that disobey those laws. We need to make this area in Vermont safe again, and we do that through law enforcement. The next thing I think is a big problem is the lack of community spirit in this town. Back when I was growing up, we partook in things, and surprisingly, we always had people that ran for the offices, and we need to bring that community spirit back to the town of Hartford.
So I've been going back and forth between what I think we need to get done in the town and what the select board priorities should be. And I'm not sure which the question was asking. We have buried 2 close young people near us this year from drug overdose. Had another one who came back from Iraq and finally couldn't take it anymore and blew most of his head off. So it's not been a great year for us on that level. I understand where these things are coming from. Are we doing enough? And I don't know what is enough. I was in high school in the 70s. We could tell stories all night, but we didn't have things like fentanyl that we could not escape if we tried them, if we were stupid enough to try them. So these are big issues. What can the select board do about it? I'm not sure. I think the select board's job is to create the environment that businesses are going to come into. I'm not sure we're the ones that bring them in. There's a lot of work for us to do just to run the town. And I would love to talk to anybody about the priorities, about how we fix the things that are bringing us down. Oh, sorry.
Over the last 2 years, we've gotten great new leadership. Love or hate the select board, the town leadership at the town office level is awesome. Looking forward, budget. Can we not reduce the budget growth, but can we actually do more with less? Can we shrink the budget? I don't know. How does that affect people on fixed income, Social Security, to have to pay their taxes when taxes rise? So that's one. Capital planning is number two. It's a huge deal. The interest rates will cost this town, the taxpayer, hundreds of thousands of dollars over coming years. So we reshape that. And number three is select board process. How do we make the meetings shorter so they're more accessible? Number four, bonus, housing. It's going to take a little while. Vermont Housing Commissioners coming to our select board meeting on Tuesday. I encourage you to call in. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Okay, moving ahead, we have temporary pause. Hello. Okay, next question is from Darcy Riccio here in White River. Question is, what is your political party affinity?
Affinity, or what am I registered as?
It says affinity.
Okay. No real affinity for the parties. Quite honestly, I'm an independent.
I'm an American. I'm an American.
I need a new word. I have mostly been registered as a Democrat in my life, and I've even gone progressive. But at this point, it's probably Democrat.
I think this is another completely irrelevant question.
Very relevant.
I don't think it's relevant at all to the select board. We don't register for parties. I will answer that the Putney School, wildly progressive, campaigned for Obama, felt that way. Today, I feel more akin to the Phil Scott conservative, the moderate conservative. But I don't think I've changed. I think the parties have. I think realistically, I'm just wildly independent.
I'm going to say that I think any question that's asked by a member of the public of a public official or wannabe public official is relevant and important and deserves to be answered with respect. I have problems with both parties, a lot of problems. So I haven't been registered as either party for some years now. I said I worked in DC. Like, I also worked as an investigative researcher for the Washington Post for a bit. And I would say I was in DC, but not of it. I was very disillusioned, and I remain very disillusioned with the leadership that we've seen all around.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, our next question is from Norma Young here in Hartford. She's got 3 questions on here. The third one has already been asked, so I'm going to ask the first 2 because they're pretty quick. Questions are, what's your current occupation? Where do you work now? And how long have you lived in town?
Well, I mentioned this earlier, but I own 2 small businesses, Good News Training and Sure Excellence Auto Detailing. I also do some part-time journalism for the Vermont Daily Chronicle. And how long have I lived in town? Is that right? I think it's 14 years, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm a retired sea captain. I was born and raised here. I came back about 5 years ago, so I've probably lived in town 35 years.
Sorry, I got your tag there.
So I'm a lawyer in private practice. Was in Queechee, got flooded out last summer. Still haven't put the office back together, despite a lot of help from FEMA. So my office is now down on Railroad Row. And I've lived in Vermont since 1990, but I've lived in Hartford since 1998.
Full-time law student, And I have a startup on the side that is media and technology. It's focused on supporting local food across Vermont. And I moved to Hartford 3 years ago.
So I build houses, as I mentioned. Started as a timber framer, and now I do project management. But the company I work for is Earthshare Construction out of Lebanon. In 2022, it won the award in Vermont for most energy efficient house. So we're pretty proud of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I've lived here 2 years, and before that I was in Brattleboro for 2 years doing timber framing. I'm a very proud person who has been in the working class for quite some time. Some of the years I was doing journalism, I was also working as a cook. So I cooked in restaurant kitchens for about 9 years.
Okay, great. That's a good segue into our next question from Pete DeKoff here in White River Junction. The question is, with all of the new housing already in place, as well as the projected new housing coming, how will this affect the tax-based dollars coming into the town? What extra burden will this cause?
I have no idea.
Patrick, that's what I was going to say. As change comes, we've got to adjust to it. We've got to figure out, is it going to go up or down? Is it better or worse? I'm not sure how you could tell today, but I like the idea of people coming in. We need fresh ideas always. That's coming on. But it's supposed to be up on top. Right?
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Sounds like the buffalo are coming.
Does that work? Okay. New housing, new building is great for the grand list growth. Theoretically, that should share the burden of taxes better for all taxpayers. New residents to town will also be spending money, so that will help with the 1% option tax. The existing one, not necessarily the new one, although the new one would as well. So I think new residents, new housing is great for a town. I think the only way that you would see that affect current taxpayers adversely is just municipal burden, right? They're going to need services as well, but technically they will also be taxpayers, and so it will be a shared growth.
If I understand things right, the revenue of a new development is basically the tax that it brings in minus the expense to the town that it incurs. So if any of you are looking for a way to kind of nerd out on policy for towns, there's a blog called Strong Towns. And I've been following it for about a decade. And you know, they've done lots of studies, and one of these shows that the burden to a town of a big box store development, Walmart or Home Depot, that can be larger than the taxes that it brings in. So like the infrastructure developed to support that, you know, the maintenance of that infrastructure. So the town is actually losing money on those developments. So we just have to be careful. We have to fully account for all kinds of stuff like this.
Would you mind repeating the question?
Yes, question is, with all the new housing already in place, as well as the projected new housing coming, how will this affect the tax-based dollars coming into the town, and what extra burden will this cause?
I mean, I think ostensibly that these two answered it succinctly. It depends on, you know, are we getting people into those houses, and then are they paying taxes, which of course is going to bring more revenue into the town. And then, yeah, what's the burden on the town in terms of these people's use of the infrastructure? That's more people on the roads, that's more people needing services, whatever it might be. I think it's a pretty straightforward equation. I think the goal is to fill the houses, though, quite honestly.
Okay, great. We've been through in this order. This time, maybe, Brandon, I'll start with you and we'll go the other way, just just to kind of keep things exciting and make sure I'm staying awake. Okay, which is good. Next question is from Philip Sargent in Wilder, town of Hartford. And Philip has also snuck in 3 questions. I can see the theme here. 2 of which have already been asked pretty similarly. So I'll focus on his 3rd question, which is, what are your leadership skills?
Goodness me. So early in life, I did a lot of kind of leadership training. People saw me and apparently thought I could be a decent leader. So, they had me go to like the Rotary meetings, and they had me do student government and all this, and I enjoyed it. But mostly, I like working with folks. I think maybe that's why I've done the things that I've done. Is I get to be kind of like in someone else's sphere and bounce ideas off of one another. And that's you always have to respect the other person that you're working with. So to the extent I can make everyone feel like that as I'm working with them, that's what I'll say.
I would say that I have very clear vision, that I'm open to being wrong, that I communicate well, that I love other people and really try to engage with empathy. I will also say that I'm strong-willed and that I'm willing to face withering criticism and stand strong in my conviction and moral values. So, for example, I've been, where I say I have room to improve is being a little gentler in my delivery. But for example, if we get criticized as a select board for being off topic, which I think is fair, but then we get questions asked that are completely outside the scope of the select board role in a candidate forum for the select board, I think it makes sense that someone should push back and say, that's not relevant to this conversation. And to me, like it or leave it, I think that is a mark of good leadership. Thank you.
I run a killer meeting. I've never had a meeting go overtime without a lot of agreement. Because I think it's important to respect everyone's time. If you have a certain amount of work to do, somebody's come up with an agenda that says we can do it in this amount of time, so let's really work on that. And that partly comes from, I'm second oldest of 7, 9 years top to bottom, so I always had this little troop that I was like, yeah, get back in there, do what you have to do. But I think it's a mark of respect for everybody if we really stick to the work and not get off the tangents that sometimes go on in these meetings. I'm glad I'm home because I can go out on the porch and yell. And I have to wonder sometimes how much of it is preparation. I also believe very much so in being prepared for a meeting, which has been underscored for years by judges who will not stand for you coming in and using their time and not being ready.
I'm a captain. I'm a captain of the ship, so I know how to work with people. I know how to find their best qualities and use those qualities to accomplish goals, to bring the ship to its destination on time, on budget, through all types of weather. So I'm a leader. I'm a captain.
That was very Matthew McConaughey. Can you repeat the question for me, please?
Yes, what are your leadership skills?
Well, leadership skills, I think you need to be a good listener. I think you absolutely need to respect people. I think you need to absolutely have vision. I agree with all that stuff. I did go through the Leadership Upper Valley. I'm a graduate of the class of 2012. I am a coach by trade, so I have to lead people to a healthier outcome. So there's a lot that goes into that. I think sometimes you just know when you're a leader. I think it's also important to know when it's time to follow and defer to other people when you're outside of the scope of your expertise, and I think that's also another good leadership skill.
Okay, great, thank you. Our next question is from Cindy Hall, White River Junction. Question is, Rocket, I'll start with you and we'll continue around. What do you see are the major needs of the town of Hartford, intermediate and long term?
Oh, we can always improve on all levels in all areas, right? I mean, clearly we have a lot of infrastructure. We have the most road mileage for any town in Vermont. I think that's probably a huge one, but some of the priorities that I listed out earlier around finance, so capital planning and budget, I think we have a lot of room to improve there. Those are both intermediate, and I would say longer term, obviously we want to solve it sooner than later, is housing. But housing is a supply issue right now, luckily. A demand issue is like Gary, Indiana, or Detroit, where people don't want to live there. And we have the opposite issue, where we don't have enough housing. And obviously putting shovels in the ground is going to take a long time, but very important and worthwhile.
I'm not sure this is what that you were asking about, but the thing that's coming to mind for me is fixing our ability to speak and act respectfully towards each other. Once we stop wasting time on, scoring points, I think these things are going to be easier to see. I don't know really how we get up to speed fast enough on the housing issue. I own 2 houses now only because my son was moving home with his family, and there's no way they could afford to live here. And that's just wrong. He makes good money. And they could not find anywhere they could afford. And so if we want to grow the town, we've got to have housing for families to come in, keep the schools going. It's so interconnected, it's hard to tease it out. But mostly, I want us to be nice to each other so people want to live here.
What was the question?
Question is, what do you see are the major needs of the town of Hartford, intermediate and long-term?
Well, I'm going back to infrastructure. We need to maintain our infrastructure. We need to grow the business environment so we can keep our property taxes down.
If this select board thing doesn't work out for you, Sue, I want to nominate her for town paddler. I think we need somebody that can wield the paddle. All kidding aside, I was surprised to find out that the town of Hartford has a D+ rating when it comes to public safety. That's just north of an F. So for show of hands, how many people here are concerned about public safety in this town? It's a pretty good number. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at. And again, I think, reiterating what Brendan was talking about, there are towns out there that are the size of Hartford that had 0 crime. Sleepy Hollow, New York, Luzerne, Pennsylvania, Lewisboro, New York, Thetford Township, Michigan, Weiser, Idaho, all had 0 crime. I think we need to find out what they're doing. Housing, absolutely. I talked with Jeremy Delisle, who's works with the town Public Works. There's clearly some infrastructure issues. I don't have them all figured out, from the water mains to the potholes, but listening to that guy I think is important.
As I remember the question, it was top 2 priorities for the town. One that's short-term and one that's long-term. The short-term thing, I think housing. Most of us mentioned it. I build houses, and when I worked down at Bensonwood as a timber framer, one of the things that Bensonwood has done is make houses into panelized, like a product almost, where the panels are loaded onto a truck and a whole house goes up in 5 days on site, once it's properly built inside. So, this could be like World War II levels of, we all get together and do the thing because it's that important. So the long-term thing I want to focus on is community, in the sense of we are so atomized right now. We're so sort of like in our own individual little bubbles, in the sense of we don't have as much community as humans used to, and that needs to change.
Okay, great. Our next question is from Fred Lerner, White River, town of Hartford. I'm going to frame this slightly because we've talked a little bit about it. Please name a specific problem that you would address and tell us how you would propose to solve it.
It's really hard to tease one out.
I don't think he can hear me.
Can you hear me? I thought so.
Just trying to help.
Thanks. Now, I've totally forgotten what I was just going to say. So, yeah, thanks. Say the question again.
Yeah, what's a specific issue that you'd like to tackle and how would you do it?
Okay, the thing that I was thinking about was probably 15, maybe 20 years ago, I was going to buy a building just off of Sykes Mountain Avenue that was 2 units, rental units. I was going to put my office in one and keep renting out the other one. And when I applied to the town for the change of use, they told me that I would have to put a culvert under Sykes Mountain Road in order to buy the building. And I just started to laugh. Why would I have to do that? And I remember thinking, this is a really bad sign about what's going on in this town. I'm going to half the water use because I'm not going to live there. But that was the town's response. So I think that's one thing I have wondered about for years. Has that gotten any better? You cannot put that kind of thing on people who are trying to just move along in their lives. But that's all I've got for right now on that issue. I'd like to work on that.
Well, thanks for the question, Fred. I think the biggest problem is voter apathy and lack of participation in this town. And the solution is to run for office. We need to get people more involved. We need to get community spirit. We need to have people not afraid to stand up and express their opinions.
I agree with what Patrick just said. I think, I keep hearing the housing issue, which reminds me that we want to have, I think we want to look to get small manufacturing businesses here that are going to be attractive to families, quite honestly. I think families are the cornerstone of a town, and we want to be attractive to them. But I think, again, what undergirds that is a safe town with good schools. It's not like it's just one simple answer. I feel like I keep coming back to public safety, but I think they all interplay off of each other. So I would try to tackle those simultaneously, especially attracting small manufacturing businesses.
I think one problem I have a decent solution to is the question of voter apathy. But my solution's a little different. I'm a big proponent of more direct democracy. Congress doesn't get a lot of input from citizens. Sometimes state houses don't get a lot of input from citizens. I think that can change. I think it can start with representatives like myself, sort of like reaching out to everyone and saying, okay, what are your ideas for such and such an issue? Taking all those in. And when I think I have a solution, reaching out again and saying, what do you think about this solution? And then it can move from representatives asking this to the town having more direct votes on things. I trust the voter. I want to see what people's actual opinions on things are.
I think every answer you've heard so far reflects, is out of the scope of the Select Board. The 2 jobs of the Select Board are to put together a budget for the taxpayers to approve or to deny. The second role is to support and supervise the town manager in executing a well-run town. Those are our jobs on the Select Board. My priority would be the capital planning budget. This is hundreds of thousands of dollars, your money, that's sitting in accounts for purchases that are going to be 5 or 7 years away. These accounts right now, they make 1% to 2% interest rate. Inflation is what, 5%? We are losing your money to interest rates. We are taxing you and not spending that money on things that are useful to you. That's a big problem. I would fix that.
Okay, great. We've got a question from Mary Nadeau here in town of Hartford, which I think we've kind of looked at, the critical issues facing the town. I'm going to hold on that one, and we'll come back to it after we've gotten through some of the other ones here. Okay, our next question is from Harry Kendrick, Wilder, town of Hartford. Question is, Gates Street is in major need of repair, so it can be used again. What priority do you think this should be for the town? How should we proceed? Oops, I've lost my question. Here you go.
Well, I don't live in that neck of the woods, but boy, if I did, I'd be hopping mad. I think it should be a #1 priority. It's an embarrassment. It's ugly, and it's downright inconvenient for those people who live up there. It's just not right. They're taxpayers, and they should get that road fixed, and they should do it quickly.
Remind me where Gate Street is?
By Fairview Terrace.
Okay, we're talking about Fairview Terrace. Okay, that's what I was thinking. Okay. Well, I know there's two opinions on it. I know one opinion is that you just need to just crush it and turn it into grass, and the other opinion, and that would be the money-saving option, and that's from somebody who would be doing the work. And then there's, put into it the kind of hardy, long-lasting road that you need. And I think this comes back to the budget. Do we fund all of these things, or do we maybe take the tough decision and just turn it into a field of grass and people just have to go around it? It's a tough one for me. Given the struggles that we have with the money, I think I'm more open to closing it down if people can get to the same place in the town. And it might be hard to hear them complain about it, but that might be the right thing to do, depending upon how much we save.
I think sometimes you have to say, I don't know right this second, but I will research it and get you an answer on X or Y timeline. And that's kind of me in this situation. I think it's going to take a reading of where else we can cut in the budget, and if I lived there, I'd be hopping mad too. But again, no one wants their taxes to increase, that sort of thing, so I'd be happy to look into it further.
I really respect that answer. I appreciate that. Harry, the Gate Street is undergoing an engineering study now. So they came in and presented at the select board a few months ago. I'm fully in support. I think the town has an obligation to maintain its infrastructure, period. Right now, current select board, current leadership, we are dealing with the repercussions of past leadership not maintaining it properly. So that's the reality. And it is unfortunate that citizens have had to suffer. Gate Street, it might warm your heart to know, is undergoing engineering studies, and that those have been presented and are continuing. They need to build a new retaining wall. And I think 2 different walls have been proposed, and then a whole number of solutions. So we can offline about that as well.
The thing that bothers me the most about that situation is that when I'm around there, I think this looks like a town that doesn't care about itself. It's such a gaping hole. It's like going up to Burlington, where they were supposed to be putting in that big development in the center of town, and all you've got is empty holes. So I don't have an opinion on which way it should go, but it bothers me that we haven't gone anywhere. My daughter-in-law lives at the top there, so my grandchildren spend a lot of time up there. So on that level, I'm really happy there's not cars whipping up that road when they're outside playing. But I'm glad to hear that the select board's doing something about it, because it needs to get fixed one way or the other.
Okay, great. I've got a relatively small number of cards still in my hand, so if you've been thinking of writing a question, now is the time. I have one from Nancy Davis here in White River, also about sort of overall priorities. I'm going to hold that with Mary's for a second. since we've talked a little bit about it, and ask a question. The next one is from Michelle Boleski, White River Junction. Question is, are you in favor of the proposed 1% additional sales tax, which will be on the ballot this March as a separate item?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Listening to a lot of people in the town discuss it, I'm of the opinion 1% is a rather small percent for people to have to burden. I'm not a fan of increasing taxes, quite honestly. I wish we were better at doing more with what we have. But some of the arguments that I've heard, and I won't go into them because I don't have a whole lot of time, it sounds to me like it's not unreasonable and the advantages to it would be better. But again, I'm not a pro-tax increase person generally. Oh, sorry.
So I think the question was, am I in favor of it being on the ballot as a separate item? And my answer to that is yes. I think we deserve to hear from the entire community what they think about it. And it's also kind of up to the select board, how they present it, how they have kind of what rules they've set for how this is spent.
Just to clarify, the question was, are you in favor of the 1% tax?
Of the tax itself?
Yes, not the separate item.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I've yet to decide, but I am heartened by the fact that this is not going into the general fund. The proposal is not for it to go into the general fund. It's for it to go into a special account that voters have to later decide on what to spend that on. So we all get a say at every point along the way what it's spent on. So I also, by the way, have looked into whether it applies to like home heating oil, which I thought, I know I can't afford an increase on that. I spent $1,300 last month on that stuff. So, but the answer is no, it does not apply to that, and it does not apply to gasoline and some other things, normal sales tax things in Vermont, like food and clothing and medical supplies. It also does not apply. So that's those things. For those reasons, I'm leaning, that's why I'm on the fence.
So the local option tax is by state statute has to be pulled aside to a separate fund for citizens to spend. We also already have a 1% on rooms and meals. That's local option tax as well. My answer is no, I'm not in support of it. I will say that I was initially in support of it, and here's why. I initially had the position that we should be able to tax cannabis sales through a local option tax. The state does not allow us to do that unless we also have a local option tax. So that's why I supported that. I've changed positions actually on both matters, and I met with the cannabis commissioner earlier this week, specifically because cannabis companies are getting taxed 20% on their revenue by the state. It's unbelievable. So short answer, no. I think that we, as a select board, could have done better in our public consideration of that and bringing in more information and understanding better how that's going to affect the taxpayer and small businesses. So potentially down the road, I would support it, but right now, no.
I don't support any additional tax when I can see across the river in New Hampshire. We don't need anything else that's going to send people over there to do their shopping.
No, I am not for the tax. I think it will be further disadvantage our businesses here. I'm for less tax and less regulation.
Okay, great. Thank you, each candidate, for being concise throughout this. It's been really great. I think we've covered a lot of good ground. We had some questions here, two in particular, from Mary and Nancy, that were sort of a general nature about priorities for the town. And what I thought maybe we'll do now as sort of a closing is give every candidate a couple of minutes to sort of have a closing statement talk about the priorities that you see, and we'll kind of use that as a concluding portion for today. So in order to get back to our magic basket, so again, for the candidates, take 2 minutes before I loom over you to just give us kind of a closing statement, a summary of your candidacy and some of the priorities that you see for the town. And we will start off with Brandon.
Well, I'm thankful for the opportunity to have spoken to you today and answered your questions, and I hope to keep doing that. If I'm on the select board, I'm going to fight for people in the working class. That's what I'm saying is what you're going to get. You know, I think the economy as it stands now, you know, it's a nationwide thing, and it's put a lot of us in a tough situation, but it does play out here locally. And we have this like really cool opportunity to all get together and figure out solutions to it. And I think kind of that's what I want to be a part of. I want to help everyone get together and figure out the solutions to huge problems that have come at us from the outside. I'm really looking forward to fighting for people I don't know. That was kind of one of the cheesy slogans of like Bernie, I think, a few years ago, but it seems important. It seems like relatively few people are willing to actually fight for people they don't know. So like, I'll fight for you, and hopefully you will also fight for people you don't know, because like that's how communities happen. Otherwise, it's not a community, I think. And let's do that, huh? Thanks for letting me talk. Oh yeah, there it is.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, I'll go back to the magic basket here. Okay, our next candidate is Sue Buckles.
I think I said this before, and I'm not going to try and come up with a bunch of different words about it. What I want to see, what I want to live in, is a town where people respect each other, really, that we know each other and we respect each other for who we are, and we're not looking. Sometimes I feel like people now, and I think it's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear out there that is reality-based, looking for reasons that somebody else is wrong. And that is what I see when I look at the select board, and I don't like it. I want us to be in a place where everyone's pulling in the same direction, or at least not trying overtime to pull us away from where we're trying to head to. So I don't have any specifics, but if I'm elected, I promise I will give it everything I have.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, our next candidate is Patrick.
Well, as I said, I'm old school. I'm pretty simple. I support lower taxes, less regulation, and smaller government. I do not support the proposed sales tax nor charter changes regulating rental property put forth by the Select Board. I believe in balanced budgets. Do not spend more than we take in and spend wisely. I believe we should invest in infrastructure rather than spend on vague social justice issues which cannot be measured or achieved. I think the job of the Select Board member is to fairly administer the business of the town, provide citizens with a safe and clean environment, good schools, and stable maintained infrastructure. We should promote new businesses to alleviate the tax burden on homeowners. Hope I've been helpful.
Thank you, Patrick. Can't read upside down. Okay. Next is for you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks again for everybody coming out and showing support for your town. There's a lot that goes into this, and I mean, honestly, I'm still not super excited about moving into this position, and I'm happy to say that I have a lot of confidence in the people that are sitting up here. I'm not saying don't vote for me. Don't take that way. But what I'm saying is I'm encouraged. I like that Rocket clarified earlier just what the role of the select board is. This has been a learning curve for me coming in. I have a lot of personal experience living in town. I think I'm relatable to a lot of people as it relates to what the town needs, but I think there really does need to be a narrow focus on what the select board does, and you don't want to be everything to everyone. With that said, I'm still up for it. I'd still like to get in there and serve my community. One of the things we didn't talk about was the homelessness issue. Homelessness is a big issue around the country, and where it was most effectively dealt with, I think, in the United States is Houston. I wrote a couple of articles on that. And a big part of their success there is they're coordinated with the churches. And I am a member of the church here in the Upper Valley, and I've been deeply wedded to the churches up here. And I think it's a mistake that we don't have a higher opinion of the churches and don't have a better relationship with them to get them involved in some of this stuff. So that's something that I think I would also try and do, is encourage the churches to fulfill their role in these areas. It's no cost to the town to get the churches involved. So I would be somebody as somewhat of a liaison to that. And even if I don't get this position, I think I would still encourage that, because we have big needs, and there needs to be a lot of oars in the sea on this one, because it's just not just going to be a couple people getting it done.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Okay, Rocket.
Thank you all for coming out. I just want to clarify again, the role of the select board is twofold. We put together a budget that we propose to the taxpayers for you to approve or to send back to us. Then we support and we supervise the town manager, and through, in this case, him, the town staff. That's the job. So you either want us for that job or you want us to do something else. And if you elect people to do something else, you're going to receive that same issue that we have, which is that people are off track. The select board is off track. If I am to serve again, here are my priorities, just to reiterate. The budget. Can we keep it the same, or can we even bring it down? And it's really it's not even the top line budget, it's how much is each taxpayer paying. Because the budget can go up if the grand list grows. To everyone who wants to support small businesses, I go to almost every chamber meeting and I see very few of you there. It's a great way to support our business community. As far as the budget, that's one. Number two is capital planning. We should tax you, the taxpayers, and spend that money that year for useful purchases. We should not be holding that. The town of Hartford is not a bank. So it's going to be a huge replanning process to make that happen, but I think that's worthwhile. Number three, reformat the select board meetings so maybe Sue can lead them quickly and expediently, and people like me can lower our word count and we can get through more quickly. Lastly, housing is a huge issue, but it is not something that we can just turn on overnight. It is not just a matter of getting prefabbed homes in. There is planning and zoning, there's Act 250, there is the underlying infrastructure of power, water, sewer, and so forth. There's a lot of components to it. It's extremely challenging, but it is also a necessary problem. So it's something that we are just going to have to address over time. Thank you.
Big round of applause for our candidates. Great. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Thanks to Junction Arts and Media for getting this online for everybody. And thanks to our great staff here at the Bugbee. We'll see you for the next event.
And I want to just say a big thank you to Chuck for moderating this event. Really, none of us at the center wanted to do that, Chuck, so thank you. We do have some snacks and some coffee if anyone wants to chat with the candidates informally. We have some treats at the back of the dining room. Oh,